Now, kind of like I said a few minutes ago, nutrition programming is really about having a specific purpose, right? So I want you guys to think about nutrition programming for fat loss or body recomposition as a cycle. So you remember we talked about periodization. Nutrition programming for fat loss can absolutely be a part of your progressive periodization program, right? It has to be planned into your cycle, just like any other training cycle. So if you remember, we talked about daily preparedness, we talked about health optimization and body recomposition really in week 1, and it was part of the tactical athletes preparedness cycle. So whenever you're planning to do a fat loss cycle, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is that there is an end point, right? So if you are programming any cycle into your periodized program, understand that every cycle, including a fat loss cycle, has a specific purpose, and it's only for a specific period of time. Okay, a lot of times when you're going into a dieting cycle, there's not necessarily an end in sight. And a lot of people, they tend to diet until they've hit whatever number in their head that they've decided that they need to hit. Right, and we want to avoid that. I'm actually jumping ahead a little bit. That was actually in one of my slides ahead, but I felt like it was an important point to make. So again, it can be used as part of a progressive periodized program, right? Can positively influence strength and performance. So again, the goal of nutrition programming is to ideally maintain your lean body mass and your strength and performance, right? And this is a big one. It's unlikely to affect mood or cognitive performance, unlike when you're in a dieting cycle. Now, if we compare that to dieting, again, you know, there really is no endpoint a lot of times when somebody enters into a diet. And I will tell you from experience that a lot of times people enter into diets very haphazardly as well. And what I mean by that is usually what happens, even in the tactical population, is somebody will wake up one day, you know, they'll get on the scale in their bathroom, or they'll go stand in the mirror and kind of, you know, do like a self-inspection. You know, I don't know if you guys have ever fallen victim to that. And then, you know, suddenly they'll decide that it's time to lose weight. And a lot of that is based on pure aesthetics. And what we want to understand and what we want to grasp the concept is that it's not just about aesthetics for us, right? It's about being able to perform our jobs. So, you know, they wake up in the morning, they look in the mirror, they're like, oh, I need to go on a diet, I need to lose some weight, I need to lose some of this fat. And that usually begins by some type of restriction immediately, right? And that's typically how it starts. You know, we jump into it because we don't like what we saw. We're restricting calories now. You know, we're eating less. We think we got to exercise more. All of these things, you know, can't eat the things that we like. And there's really no planning going on, and there's really no endpoint going on, right? Dieting is not likely to enhance performance. So whenever you're eliminating calories too low, don't expect to make any increases in the way that you're performing, either strength-wise. You know, you can't really expect to get any faster, and in some cases you can't even maintain the performance that you already have. So there is a detraining effect when you are dieting too hard. It's very likely that you're going to experience altered moods. Have you guys ever experienced maybe the feeling of being hangry? Does everybody know what hangry is? Yeah, Joe says absolutely. Yes, definitely. Nick says every morning. Nick, we might have to work on that. Yeah, so what happens when you're hangry or when your mood is affected? You know, it not only affects you and your training, but everybody around you. Absolutely. So it can be a strain on your relationships and can create irritability. You know, everything, it seems almost like you're more sensitive to everything when you're hangry, right? Everything is magnified. Can even affect, you know, levels of depression. You know, if you are constantly eliminating calories or constantly in a deficit, you can actually experience a lot of issues with your cognitive function because you've sort of been malnourishing yourself over the last few weeks. You know, Steve Smith and I, we actually had a little text conversation about that the other day. So you want to be careful about dropping, again, your calories too low when you're dieting. And energy levels, of course, can be affected because your energy intake is severely affected. This is another one as well that I see pretty frequently whenever somebody starts their diet is they get into this routine where they're, you know, they feel like they're doing great and they're eliminating calories and, you know, they're not eating their favorite foods. And then what happens? You know, you walk past the pizza place that you love and the smell of pizza is coming out of the building, or Friday rolls around and your friends invite you to go out and you have maybe a drink. And then what happens? Those inhibitions are gone. And then you go completely off the rails. And then you feel awful. You know, who has experienced that before? How does that make you feel? Have you guys ever been in a situation where you felt like you were trying to lose body fat and then this sort of restriction binge cycle happened? Ellie says, yeah, she's been there. Yeah, you feel out of control, right? And that's definitely not what we want. 2 days into a fast, pizza the next 3 days. Oh, I love pizza too. That would totally be me. Joe, you're experiencing it right now. Slow trickle into snacking. Yeah, that happens too, right? Where you think you got it all wrapped up, and then out of nowhere, the hangry monster gets you. You go totally off the rails. Yeah, absolutely. So, well, let me go back. So this is definitely what we're going to talk about avoiding here. Making sure that we're not falling victim again to the, kind of this diet culture mentality, because ultimately diet culture is set up for you to fail. It's set up for you to fail because diet culture wants you to come back and wants you to continue using their products and their supplements and their methods and all of those things because they know this is how they're going to get you to spend your money with them, right? So that's not the goal here, right? We want to provide effective weight loss, specifically body fat loss and body recomposition, so that there's not this continued cycle. Now, you should also keep in mind that as you age and as your goals change, you know, you're going to see fluctuations in your weight. And having a fluctuation in your weight isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? The things that we want to understand is that sometimes you need to add on more weight, right? So just keep in mind that you shouldn't expect to be the same weight that you were in high school as you are now, or even a couple of years ago, right? So I'll give you a personal example. You know, it wasn't too long ago, you know, around the time that I started really getting into my bachelor's degree and becoming a dietitian, that I often over restricted my calories, and I would fall prey to the same things that, you know, you guys have experienced, where I'm over restricting, I'm being really good, but I'm freaking starving, and eventually I just go completely off the rails, or I'm eating everything in my cabinet because I just can't take it anymore. You know, my family can't stand me, all those kinds of things. You know, fast forward, I'm a dietitian, you know, I'm training consistently. I kind of have things better in place. You know, I understand more so about not restricting, about understanding eating for performance, right? So I say all that to say that sometimes your weight doesn't really mean anything. So if you have performance goals, your weight isn't always a detriment. So over the last few years, my goal has really been to get stronger. So just to give you an example, probably 3 years ago, I was probably about 30 pounds lighter than I am right now. But my max squat was like 110 pounds. I'm 30 pounds heavier now, and my max squat, I actually just did it today. I squatted 205 for a single. So it's important to understand that if you have performance goals, your weight doesn't always play a factor. So now, if you're doing some type of aerobic-based training, absolutely. You may need to lose some weight. So for instance, for me, I don't have the fastest run times right now. I can run, but they're not the fastest. So before I get into that cycle, I may need to go through a recomposition cycle or a fat loss cycle in order to get my run times up and for it to just be better on my joints. So what I'm saying is it's really important to understand why you're doing what you're doing and if it's really going to benefit you. So if you are trying to go through a fat loss cycle or change your body composition purely for aesthetics, I would encourage you to take a deeper look and understand that there are different goals that you can hit that have nothing to do with your weight. Okay, so I'm off my soapbox. Do you guys like how I threw in there that I PR'd at 2:05 today? Just saying. Okay, so now let's talk about some other negative detriments of, too low of energy intake and dieting. So relative energy deficiency in sport is actually something that really focuses on kind of this low energy availability in athletes. And not many of us are going to be impacted in such an extreme way that we would be considered impacted by Red-S. But I want you guys to be aware of what it is and that some of the physiological issues related to Red-S could be affecting you if you're dieting too low or if your nutritional intake isn't meeting your needs. Nicholas says, let's just say I'm on the Little Debbie lifting team as of now. That's pretty funny. Okay. Yeah, so Red-S is simply defined as impaired physiological functioning caused by relative energy deficit, not eating enough to support optimal health or performance, okay? So this can lead to impairments with pretty much all of your metabolic functions. So metabolic rate, menstrual function, bone health, your immune system, muscle protein synthesis, and it can even impact your heart health, okay? So dieting, taking in too low of calories can have some serious medical implications. Now, I'm definitely not the expert on this topic, so I'm not going to go into it in depth. But like I said, I think it's an important piece for you guys to be aware of. One of the things to understand is that, again, like I said, the underlying factor is just low energy availability. And as active individuals, you need to be able to perform because a lot of us, our job and the ability to do our job, it really is the difference between life and death for some people, right? And these are some additional symptoms that are related to Red-S. So you have decreased muscle strength, decreased performance, you have increased injury risk. This is absolutely true. A lot of the injuries that come through the physical therapist that I work with, a lot of times he will send them to my office. And what I tend to find out is that they are not eating properly. Believe it or not, a lot of the soldiers that I see tend to have only 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day. They're very underfed. Even the overweight individuals that I work with, what I tend to find is they're not necessarily eating a lot. They actually sometimes are not eating enough. And then they kind of do what you guys said that you do. They try to lose weight, and then they go out and binge, or they go out and have a few drinks, and then, you can just forget it, right? So decreased training response. So again, you're going to see decrements to your ability to increase your performance, decreased coordination, clumsiness. So a lot of cognitive impairments there, impaired judgment, and then depression as well. Okay, so food plays a big role in pretty much everything. And if you haven't caught on already, very low calorie dieting and creating large calorie deficits is definitely not the way that we want to go.